In the cold wind of the north, Ned Stark stood at the edge of the Godswood in Winterfell, his face quiet but troubled. Ravens had flown, messages sent, but answers had not come, not from Jon Arryn, and now not even from Lysa. And then came the letter that changed everything. It arrived with the seal broken, but the words were unmistakable. Lysa Tully, once his sister by marriage, now a widow, accused the Lannisters of poisoning Jon Arryn. But more than that, she begged for help, fearing for her son Robin's life. Yet what struck Ned most was not her fear, but her desperation. Lysa was never strong on her own, and with Jon gone, she had no one left to trust. Catelyn had read the letter twice. Her face had gone pale the second time. "Ned," she said quietly, "Lysa is afraid, and when she's afraid, she hides. She's taken Robin to the Eyrie. She's isolated herself," Ned muttered, "and isolated Robin." Then came a second thought, darker, deeper. If Jon Arryn was dead, and if the Vale had no Lord Protector but a child, then the Vale was vulnerable. And if Lysa was not strong enough to lead, someone else had to. The North needed allies. Winter was coming. Robert was becoming increasingly reckless, and Ned was to be his hand. But in King's Landing, allies were daggers hidden behind smiles. If he was to protect his house and the realm, Ned needed more than northern honor. He needed leverage, and what greater leverage than the Vale? Ned arrived at the Eyrie not as a guest, but as a brother and guardian. The journey was perilous, the mountain path still dangerous, but the Stark banner rode with strength. Sir Roderick, Maester Luwin, and a small escort of 50 northern swordsmen climbed with him. At the gates of the Eyrie, Lysa's guards hesitated, but not for long. "I come for Robin," Ned said simply. Lysa's face twisted with anxiety when she saw him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her lips trembling. Robin clung to her skirts, a pale, sickly boy, but one who looked up at his uncle with curiosity. "You can't take him," Lysa whispered. "He's all I have left." "And he's the Vale's only hope," Ned said firmly. "You want to protect him, I understand. But hiding in the mountains while the realm crumbles won't save him. Let the Lords of the Vale see strength again. Let them see Robin stand beside the Warden of the North." Lysa hesitated, but deep down, even she knew the truth. No one was rallying to her. The Lord's declarant mocked her weakness. Petyr Baelish whispered poison in ears across the realm. She needed a Stark's name. More than she would admit, Ned knelt beside the boy. "Robin," he said softly, "would you like to ride with me? Would you like to show the Vale that you're strong, like your father?" Robin blinked, then nodded, slowly. A raven flew to every corner of the Vale, from Runestone to the Bloody Gate, from Redford to Longbow Hall. A council was summoned. By Lysa, but by Lord Stark, the hand of the king, guardian of young Lord Robin. When the Lords of the Vale gathered in the high hall of the Eyrie, they found a different sight awaiting them. Robin Arryn, dressed in Arryn blue and silver, stood beside his uncle. Ned Stark sat behind him, not on the high seat, but close enough to command presence. "My lords," Ned spoke, his voice calm but firm. "The Vale has known peace and pride for generations, but now it is adrift. Jon Arryn is gone, his son remains, but he cannot lead alone." Whispers filled the hall. Some were displeased, others intrigued. Lord Yon Royce stood up. "And you would have us follow the child with you, pulling the strings behind his back?" "No," Ned replied. "You will follow him, and I will protect him until he comes of age." I have no claim here but blood and duty. And yet the lords of the Vale looked at the Stark banner with fresh eyes. They knew the North was loyal, strong, untouched by Lannister gold, and they knew Robin needed a shield. Better a Stark than a viper like Baelish. The council voted before nightfall. Robin Arryn was confirmed as Lord of the Vale, and Ned Stark, by unanimous agreement, became his Lord Protector, far away in King's Landing. Cersei Lannister crushed a cup in her hand when the news arrived. The Vale was no longer neutral. It belonged to the Starks now, and winter had indeed begun to fall. The air in the Eyrie had changed. Where once there had been only silence and Lysa's nervous footsteps echoing through the marble halls, now the clatter of steel and the firm voices of commanders filled the corridors. Ned Stark had not just come with words. He brought structure, northern discipline, and the cold certainty of action. Robin sat quietly beside Maester Coleman, watching a group of knights drill in the courtyard below. They moved like a single creature, shields rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Robin coughed, his small frame shaking, but he did not look away. Something in him stirred curiosity, perhaps even pride. Ned had not been idle since the council. He summoned the lesser houses to swear fresh oaths to House Arryn. Many came reluctantly, driven more by fear of dishonor than loyalty, but they came. House Royce pledged its swords. House Redford, hesitant at first, bowed after Lord Stark sent Lord Grafton of Gulltown a personal raven about trade security. Ned was not only making alliances, he was binding the Vale together with logic, honor, and the quiet promise of protection. Lysa, however, had grown more distant. "You're stealing him from me," she said one evening, standing in her private solar with her hands clenched at her sides. "No," Ned replied, not unkindly. "I'm giving him a realm to rule." "He's a sick boy," she snapped. "He needs me, not soldiers and banners. He needs to grow into a man, Lisa. If he stays hidden here, coddled and afraid, the lords will turn on him when he's of age. You think they'll respect a boy raised in shadows?" Lysa's lip trembled, but she said nothing more. Back in Winterfell, Catelyn watched the Ravenland. Her heart pounded as she read Ned's letter. Robin had been declared Lord of the Vale, and Ned was now Lord Protector. She folded the parchment, her hands steady even as her thoughts raced. "Bran," she said to her youngest son nearby, "your father is setting the pieces on the board." Bran looked up, confused. "What board?" "The one kings and queens forget they're on until they lose." In King's Landing, whispers had become a storm. Littlefinger watched with narrowed eyes as the small council debated the news. Varys, ever calm, twitched his fingers as he spoke. The Vale was expected to remain ... isolated. Ned Stark has shifted that balance. Cersei's voice was venom. "He's building power under our noses." Renly Baratheon leaned back in his chair. "So what? It's his sister's son. He has a right to guide him." Tywin's raven arrived the next morning. His reply was clear. "Keep an eye on Eddard Stark. His grasp is growing longer than his honor." Ever claimed it would. Back in the Vale, things were far from calm. A minor skirmish erupted near the border of the Vale and the Riverlands. House Hunter, ever rebellious, refused to send troops or taxes. Ned dispatched Seer Roderick with a detachment, but no blood was spilled. Instead, Roderick brought back Lord Hunter himself bound, but unharmed. He refused to kneel, Seer Roderick said. Ned turned to Robin, who now stood beside him daily, thin but watchful. "And what shall we do with him, my lord?" Robin swallowed nervously, then whispered, "Let him kneel before the banners." But no prison, just oaths. A murmur of approval passed through the gathered lords. Ned smiled faintly. Robin was learning. Later that night, Maester Coleman confided in Ned. "He's still weak, but he's improving. He's eating more, less fits. You've given him a reason to care." Ned nodded. Purpose can heal what fear cannot. Then came the letter from the Riverlands. Hostilities were rising. The Lannisters were growing bold, and the Riverlord feared invasion. Lord Hoster Tully was ill. Edmure was too brash. Riverrun needed support. Catelyn wrote urgently, "Come to Riverrun. Bring the Vale if you must. The storm is coming." Ned stood beneath the moonlit sky that night, alone atop the Aeries' highest tower. The stars stretched above like cold white scars. The north was distant, the Vale precarious, and war crept closer with each raven that arrived. If he moved too soon, he risked everything. But if he waited, the south would burn and the north would not be spared. He looked east, toward the mountains, then west, toward the Riverlands. There would be no peace now, only preparation. The days grew shorter, and the wind atop the Eyrie bit harder. With each passing sunset, Ned Stark felt the noose of southern politics tightening around the neck of the realm. War was no longer. A whisperate was knocking at the door. News from King's Landing arrived like a cold slap to the face. Tyrion Lannister had been captured by Catelyn on the King's Road, accused of plotting against Bran. The Lion's pride had been wounded, and Tywin's reply was as merciless as expected. Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, began raiding the Riverlands. Villages burned. Innocents died. Ned paced the solar, Robin seated across from him. The boy's face was pale but focused. His hands trembled slightly, but he gripped the carved falcon on the armrest of his chair with surprising strength. "We cannot sit idle," Ned said. "Your cousin, your blood, calls for aid." "And the Lannisters, I want to help," Robin interrupted, his voice thin but sure. Ned looked at him carefully. "Then be ready to leave the Eyrie." Lys's scream echoed down the hall. She burst into the solar, hair unkempt and eyes wild. "No, you cannot take him to war." Ned turned slowly. "I'm not taking him into battle. I'm taking him to Riverrun, to show the realm that the Vale stands with its kin, with the Riverlands, with the North." "He'll die," Lysa cried. "He's not strong, Ned. He's not like your boys." "He doesn't have to be like them," Ned said coldly. "He has to be better. He must lead." But Lysa wouldn't yield. That night, she tried to flee the Eyrie with Robin in tow. Was Seer Vardis, Aegeon, who stopped her at the moon door, hands trembling as she sobbed and screamed, clutching the boy to her chest. "You're mad," Seer Vardis whispered, "and the realm cannot be ruled by madness." By morning, Lysa was placed under gentle house arrest. Not imprisoned, Ned would not go that far. But she would no longer be allowed to undermine the Lord of the Vale. Robin, shaken, still chose. To leave Riverrun was a fortress on edge. Edmure Tully met them at the gates with relief and surprise. "You brought the boy?" he asked, glancing at Robin. "I brought the future of the Vale," Ned answered, "and its swords, 2,000. Knights and men-at-arms marched behind them, banners of the falcon flying high. It was not the full strength of the Vale, but it was enough to shift the tide and enough to send a message to the Lannisters." Catelyn embraced Ned as if they had been parted for years. You did it, she whispered. You made the veil move. It's not done yet, he said. This is just the beginning. Inside the great hall of Riverrun, strategy unfolded like a blade. The Tully bannermen spoke of retaliatory strikes, of calling their banners, of revenge. But Ned stood silent until they all quieted. We fight only when we must, he said, and when we do so with honor. Lord Blackwood leaned forward. And what would honor say about Tywin Lannister burning our villages? Ned looked him in the eyes. That we stop him, but we do not become him. The turning point came when Robb Stark arrived with his host. The boy who had once played with wooden swords now wore a wolf's head on his cloak. He greeted his father with a short bow, but his eyes were proud. The North rides to war, he said, and the Vale rides with it, Robin said from beside Ned, his voice just loud enough to be heard. It was the first time Robin spoke in front of so many lords. They listened. In a quiet moment, Robb sat with Robin beneath a tree in Riverrun's Godswood. The two boys, cousins yet so different, shared awkward silence at first. Then Robin asked softly, "Were you afraid to lead?" Robb chuckled. "Still am, sometimes." Robin nodded. "Me too. But we don't have to be perfect," Robb said. "Just better than the ones we're fighting." Robin looked down at his trembling hands. "I'll try." Robb clapped him on the shoulder. "That's all we can do." And for the first time, Robb and Arryn smiled. The Riverlands transformed into a crucible of blood and fire. Raids became battles, and battles bred vengeance. As Robb Stark's host marched west to face Tywin Lannister's forces, the banners of the Vale flew proudly beside the direwolf of the north. Ned Stark did not ride at the front he rode at Robin's side. Not as a warrior this time, but as a guardian moulding a boy into a lord. Robin, Arryn, once trembling and pale, now wore chainmail under his cloak, though he had yet to draw his sword. The Vale Knights respected him not because of his strength, but because of the man who stood behind him, and slowly their respect began to shift toward the boy himself. Their first real test came at the Battle of the Burnt Tower, where a Lannister raiding party had taken control of a Tully outpost near the Red Fork. Robb had dispatched a flanking force, and Ned offered the Vale men to lead it. Robin stood by the war table, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's see a Lynn. Corbray command the front, I'll ride behind him with the second line." Seer Lynn raised an eyebrow, but did not object. "A bold position, my lord." "I don't need to swing a sword," Robin said. "Just show them I'm not hiding anymore." And so he rode, not into the heart of the battle, but close enough for the Lannisters to see the boy lord bearing the falcon and moon. The Vale soldiers followed with pride, and under Corbray's brutal leadership, the raiders were routed. After the battle, Ned found Robin sitting on a stone, blood on his boots, though none of it was his. His face was pale again, but his hands did not shake. "I was afraid," Robin admitted. Ned sat beside him. "So was I. But I didn't run. That's what matters." In the aftermath, messages came from all corners. Pettier, Baelish, Ever. The Spider sent a raven to Riverrun, congratulating Robin on his bravery. He requested an audience, promising to bring gifts from King Robert. Ned burned the letter without reading it aloud. "Littlefinger will seek to twist the veil through. Charm if he cannot do it by fear," he warned. Robin only nodded. "Then we'll deny him both." Meanwhile, Lysa remained in the Eyrie, her protests now quieted by letters from both her son and Lord Royce. Under orders from Ned, the Lords Declarant had assumed administrative roles in the Vale, forming a council. to oversee internal matters, while Robin led the external affairs. It was a compromise, but it gave the boy space to grow without tearing the Vale into dot. In Riverrun, alliances solidified. Rob's host moved west, while Ned remained behind to hold the Tully lands and guard the supply routes. He became the quiet shield of the rebellion, not seeking glory, but ensuring the war's backbone remained unbroken. Catelyn watched all of it with wary pride. "He's becoming a leader," she said of Robin, slowly, strangely, "but he is. He has good blood," Ned replied, "and he's learning to use it for others, not himself." Then came the Raven from King's Landing. Ned's name had been stripped from the handship. Robert was dead. Joffrey sat the throne, and Lord Eddard Stark was accused of treason. The hall fell silent as Ned handed the scroll to Robb, who read it with clenched fists. "It's a lie," he growled. "You would never betray the king." "They'll twist my silence into guilt," Ned said, "but I will not start a war while we still have time to save lives." "You already started one," Catelyn whispered. The banners were called again. The North rallied anew, but this time it wasn't just Robb who marched for justice. It was Robb and Arryn too, with the full backing of the Vale. The Falcon and the Wolf marched side by side as the armies crossed into the Westerlands. The two cousins, one born to command, the other molded by circumstance, stood at the edge of destiny. Robin looked at Ned that night and said, "If I die in this war, at least let them say I stood with honor." Ned placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then, you'll live like a Stark and rule like an Arryn." The war for the realm had truly begun. The march into the Westerlands was unlike anything Robb and Arryn had imagined. Hills scorched by battle, rivers running dark with blood, and villages either emptied or smouldering in silence. Yet through it all, the banners of House Arryn flew high. Beside the direwolf of Stark, what began as an act of guardianship had become a campaign of legacy. Ned Stark moved like a shadow behind both armies, not seeking to command but to balance. Robb was becoming a commander, Robin a symbol, and between them stood Ned, the bridge of the old world and the new dot at every camp. Robin walked among the men, speaking softly, asking names. He listened to their fears, their anger. It changed him. He began to see the realm not from the high towers of the Eyrie, but from the muddy boots of its soldiers. One night, near the ruins of Fairmarket, he found a young soldier crying beside a wagon of bodies. "They were my brothers," the boy whispered. Robin knelt beside him. "Mine died too. Some before I even understood what war meant." The boy looked up, startled. "You single quotes, read ... Lord Robin, I am, and if we don't keep standing, they'll die again." In vain, the boy nodded, wiping his face. That night, dozens more knelt when Robin passed, not to his name but to his presence. In battle, Robb proved to be bold and tactical, but it was Robin's quiet influence that surprised even the most hardened knights. At the siege of Ashmark, it was Robin who offered mercy to the defenders when they surrendered, earning the loyalty of hundreds who might have died needlessly. "War isn't just about winning," Robin said to Robb. "It's about who we are after it ends." "You sound more like your uncle every day," Robb replied with a grin. But Ned was not smiling, for news had reached him a whisper at first, then confirmation he was wanted in King's Landing, not for service, but for execution. When the Raven came from the capital, it was worse than expected. Ned Stark had been captured, accused of treason. Joffrey had declared him a traitor, and the crown demanded the Vale and North stand down or be branded rebels. The tent fell into silence as Robb read the words aloud. "They want your head," he said, barely containing his fury. Robin sat in the corner, pale and shaking. His mind raced, his heart thundered in his chest. Then slowly he stood. "We march on Harrenhal," he said. The room turned to him. "That's suicide," Lord Umber growled. "No," Robin answered. "It's where Tywin is moving. If we strike there, we weaken the Lannister grip before it reaches King's Landing. We split their strength." Robb looked at him, surprised. "And what of the capital?" Robin's voice steadied. "Let them know if they harm my uncle, they will face the fury of both the Falcon and the Wolf." The march to Harrenhal was brutal. The Blackwater ran thick with ash and smoke. Tywin had already abandoned the fortress, but not before leaving. Behind his cruelty burned corpses, chained prisoners, messages written in blood. Robin entered the cursed halls of Harrenhal and whispered, "This is what they call power." Ned's sword ice had been found here, stained and tossed like a discarded relic. Robin had it retrieved. He held it in his hands not to wield, but to guard. "We will bring it back," he said, "to Winterfell when this is over." But nothing. Ended another raven. Another blow. Ned Stark was dead. Executed on the steps of the Great Sept. Beheaded by the Boy King's order. Catelyn collapsed upon hearing the words. Robb's knuckles went white as he gripped the table, his voice hollow. They killed him like a common criminal. Robin did not cry. Not then. He walked outside, into the blackened courtyard of Harrenhal. Alone, the sword ice lay beside him. And for the first time, he screamed, his voice echoing off the broken stone walls. A raw sound of grief and fury. When he returned, he was different. "They want war," Robin said quietly. "Then we give them war." "But not like them," Robb replied. "We strike clean, we strike hard, but we do not become monsters." Robin nodded. That night, the two young lords sat by the fire, ice between them. "I couldn't save him," Robin whispered. "You saved what he believed in," Robb said. "That's what matters now." The Falcon and the Wolf would not retreat. They would rise. Snow began to fall as the army moved northward. The skies grey and heavy. The wind carried a bitter cold, but none colder than the silence that had settled over the combined host of the North and the Vale. Ned Stark was gone. Yet in death, he had become more than a man. He had become the cause, atop the battlements of Riverrun. Robb and Arryn stood beside Robb Stark, their cloaks fluttering in the frigid wind. Below them, soldiers trained in grim silence. War had hardened. Their faces chiseled away the innocence that once lived behind their eyes. Even Robin, once a sickly boy in his mother's arms, now stood tall, his eyes clear with purpose. "We've won battles," Robb said, "but the war still lies ahead." "They took your father's life and called it justice," Robin murmured. "Now they expect us to bow." Robb clenched his jaw. "I will never bend the knee to a boy king." Robin looked westward. "Then we must make a king of our own." The words hung in the air like thunder. At the great hall of Riverrun, the bannermen gathered once more. House Tully, House Mormont, House Karstark, House Royce, and many others all seated, all waiting. The hall had once echoed with talk of alliances, of logistics and survival. Now it hummed with something else, a reckoning. Lady Mage, Mormont rose first. The South betrayed the North, and it betrayed the Vale. The Iron Throne murdered Lord Stark. We cannot trust them. Lord Yon Royce followed. Let the falcon fly free. Let the north and the vale declare themselves. Robin stood, his voice quiet but resolute. No more blood for kings who treat oaths like dust. If the south wants a throne of lies, let them sit on it alone. Then Rob rose. I did not want a crown, I wanted justice. But I see now justice won't come from begging at the gates of traitors. He looked to Robin, then to the gathered lords. I am Rob Stark, son of Eddard Stark, and I will not serve the usurper's son. A moment of stillness, then a sound, a sword drawn. Lord Carstark knelt, placing his blade on the floor. King in the north. Then another, king in the north, and another still, king in the north. But it didn't stop there. Lord Royce stepped forward, bowed his head to Robin Arryn, and spoke solemnly. And Robin, Lord of the Vale, Shield of the East, stands with him. The Vale follows the north. Robin said nothing. He simply nodded, and the falcon and the wolf soared together. The next move was bold. With the west bracing for war and the south lost to Lannister control, the new kingdom needed legitimacy. Raven after raven was sent across the realm, not begging for support, but demanding recognition. Dawn remained quiet. The Iron Islands rumbled with their own ambitions. The Stormlands were divided, but cracks had formed in the South's foundation. Small folk whispered of the Northern King who did not burn villages, of the boy from the mountains who brought justice instead of gold, and in the Eyrie, even Lysa Tully began to feel the shifting winds. Her son was no longer hers to mold. He had become a lord in truth and a symbol. As winter's grip tightened, the twin kingdoms prepared. Castles were reinforced, alliances cemented in old oaths and new vows, and at Winterfell, once the coldest, most remote corner of the realm, the heart of a new age began to beat. Catelyn stood on the walls beside Robin one evening, snow falling around them like memory. "You've changed," she said. "I had too," Robin replied softly. "He raised me, even when I didn't know it." She placed a hand on his arm. He would be proud. Robin didn't answer. He looked northward, toward the shadowed horizon, where whispers of White Walkers and wildling wars began to stir. He had traded fear for resolve, fragility for duty. He was no longer the boy who hid behind his mother's skirts, and in the end, he had done what many lords had failed to do. He stood when it mattered. As the wind howled through the towers of Winterfell, the banners of the wolf and the falcon flew side by side. The realm was broken, but in that fracture, a new order rose, and the legacy of Eddard Stark lived on, not in a throne, but in those who had the courage to rise after him.